perception. If you're going to a new job, sure, you start off the right way in your 30, 60, 90 days doing those things. If you're currently at your job, it is a good idea for you to get your own 360 to understand what do people think about me, because changing a reputation can take the same amount of time it took to build it or longer.
Welcome to the Your Next Move podcast, the show for high-performing professionals who want to be seen for their brilliance, speak with influence, and accelerate their path to leadership. I'm your host, Kimberly Brown, international career and leadership expert, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of Next Move, Best Move.
Welcome to Your Next Move, April. I am so excited to have you here.
Kimberly, thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation, being that you and I just have good conversations. So I'm looking forward to today.
Yes, indeed. So for any of my listeners who are meeting you for the very first time, can you please introduce yourself and let us know what you do?
So my name's April Little. I am a full-time executive coach. Prior to that, I spent my career in recruiting and HR, and I primarily work with women leaders who want to move to the executive level. Transparently, at the time of this recording, of this taping, I think that is starting to change to meet the demands of what women are facing right now. But in general, a lot of what I did was value articulation, archetyping, power dynamics influence to help them get to the next level. That is now evolving to helping them secure their positions as we see divestitures and acquisitions and things of that nature.
So important. So what made you decide that I need to pivot? So still executive coaching, but I need to add this different slant to it.
I think that part of it is that my messaging did not change and the needs were starting to change, which let me know that there might need to even be a messaging or offer, me to look at my offers again. And so over maybe 10 sales calls, I started noticing that they had high levels of anxiety about their current role. They were seeing the stock go down. They lost some of their team. So it was a lot of things, or they felt like the people that were left behind, it felt like they were competing for a secret few spots. And the politics got turned up. So I started seeing that the needs were just different from early 2025 to now as we approach mid 2026.
Are you seeing that it's any particular industry that you feel is being impacted more, or certain types of roles that are being impacted more?
I am. And I'm curious about your thoughts too there.
Yeah.
Definitely anybody in a cost center.
Okay.
What I've been finding is that
And explain that for folks who don't understand the corporate speak.
Okay, so a cost center means that you are indirectly impacting the revenue. And I'm going to say indirectly because you're still impacting the revenue. I still feel that way, even though companies see HR and comms and talent development, anything that doesn't directly acquire money or bring in revenue from a client is always potentially on the chopping block. So I tend to, over the last year, 50% of my clients have come from HR. 25% marketing, and then 25% everywhere else.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. And I agree. I know we've talked transparently. We had a chat earlier last week, y'all. And I was chatting about potentially, should I go back to a 9 to 5 and still keep my business and still do this and still do that? And I think folks in HR are 110%. I think I'm not surprised to hear that it's such a big part of folks who are reaching out to you, because I feel like HR is one of the first places to take some cuts. And then if we double down within HR, I see a lot in L&D, which is like what I do. And I see a lot of cuts there. I definitely cuts in DEI, given all the things that are happening in the world. If the company even still has DEI, because a lot of it was cut very, very early on or significantly reduced, or even if someone leaves the team, they're not rehiring. So that completely makes sense. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about folks who are really interested in getting that executive, that coveted head of, chief of, even in some organizations, it may be like an SVP, whatever executive is at their organization. Because you're in the room, have been in the room, and folks are having these conversations, and you're seeing who gets hired and who doesn't. What would you say is the biggest skill that has been missing for folks?
The ability to understand and tailor messaging. And I know that goes along with what you've been doing now, Kimberly, but I think that a lot of the times people have been leading with their expertise, and now they're starting to feel like, oh, I have to show up differently. So basically they're feeling like they're walking up an escalator going down. And that's the best way I can give you a visual.
Mm.
And they're seeing the Great Reset, but I have found that tailoring their messaging and their influence to whoever they are speaking to is the number one skill they don't have. And that's the reason why most of my clients have the coveted executive MBA, and it still didn't quite get them ready because it doesn't talk about the people dynamics of this. Anytime a market gets tight, we're not leading with expertise anymore. It goes down to basic human attraction, right? Like basic human need in terms of my need to resonate and like with you. And I think that people struggle with that, especially if they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to say, but I don't want you to like me. I want you to respect me. I have this degree. That is the number one skill. And I would even say, if I were to take it further, the number one mindset shift is that your education, as much as I think we both like education, it has taken a back seat to a lot of the internal things that we've seen at work.
Oh, 100%. I tell folks all the time. Anyone who's ever worked with me knows that I am not a believer in going back to school. I'm not. I'm like, I want to know how that will impact
Yep.
your bottom line, impact your salary directly. Like, have you been turned down because you have not gotten that level of education? So, like, when I worked in higher ed and when I was coaching folks, a lot of times they're like, okay, well, when you get your master's. Like, if you are advising folks who have masters and doctorates, you need to have one. So, you literally would not be promoted unless you had a master's degree
Mm.
for the work that I did in career coaching. So then I'm like, okay, if you are being, a door is being shut in your face because you do not have a credential, then yes, I believe in education. But I do think for a lot of, especially millennials, Gen Xers, when the recession happened back in like '08, so many folks went back to school because they're like, I could work at the grocery store or a shoe store. Or
Yeah.
let me go get this MBA. Let me go get this whatever else. Because everybody was going back. Or if they were in school and currently graduating, I feel like so many folks like over that summer were like, what program can I get into by September? Because I did not get a job. So they just went back to school. And I'm like, and it didn't necessarily help. It just delayed having to get a job. And I tell folks now, I'm like, just because you want to go back, even if you have 10 years of experience under your belt, like, oh, I'm gonna go back and get an MBA, that does not mean you're going to make more money because that doesn't actually help you with the messaging, doesn't help you with executive presence,
It
doesn't help
does
you with
not.
all these other skills. I think they sell that to you at admissions, and I've worked in admissions before, so I'm like, they sell that to you very
Yeah.
well. But I'd love to go back to that messaging piece because I think as an entrepreneur, we understand what messaging means. Like it is your program promise. It is
Yeah.
the result that you're selling to the individual. What are they going to get by working with you? It's very tangible. But when you tell a 9 to 5er, and we need to work on your messaging, what does that tangibly mean when they're really excited about moving to this next level in their career?
So when we tell a 9 to 5 or their messaging, I really see that more so as like reputation management because I find that your
Mm.
reputation is the center of gravity of your executive presence because your perceived value is more important than the actual work you do. So
Ooh.
perception, it's yes, I know, perception dynamics. So I would say that the thing they have to focus on is what do people say about me and what can they say about me in a sentence? Oh, Kimberly is really good with taking something that's linear logical and putting it into process steps. That's your brand, right? So are you controlling and curating what your brand looks like through how you consistently show up in moments where someone pisses you off, when you need to, or what I call the three coveted pieces of communication in corporate, which is three things at any point you're doing. You're informing, you're influencing, or you're inspiring when you communicate. Are you managing that well? Right. And so part of that is then let's take it further. Do I have a structure for when I do that? So that way there's consistency, right? Do I understand each individual person and their motivation? So I'm then beginning to tailor what I want through their filter to get what I want.
Mm.
That is something that, going back to your point, they do not teach in the ivory tower. And most of those people have been so far removed from corporate. Like I won't name names, but there is someone who is currently providing executive coaching here in my area at a lot of the institutions, and she hasn't worked since 1989.
Things are very different.
There's things like that, right? Like, and she's at the schools teaching and things like that. So I think it's just very important that if you do decide to go back to school, that you have a reason you're doing it and that it's not necessarily tied to I'm going to make more money. And Kimberly, you and I had this conversation about PhDs, like making sure, like, am I going back for ego or am I really going back?
Yes.
Or in my case too, okay, I want to do research. Do I need a PhD or can I take another research and methods course at community college and leverage my following and do the research and the polls and things like that? So there's always so many ways to do that. Sorry, I just went on a tangent.
No, no, no. And I think for women of color, and there's so many women of color who listen to this podcast, it's been ingrained in us like more education, more education, more education. Even if you're first gen, your parents are like, no, 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 get it,
Hmm.
go higher, go higher, go higher. But when we're thinking about the economy, I always tell folks, like, is it wise to go back to school? Especially, are you paying for it out of pocket? Is there something else you could be doing with that money? Are you going to have massive student loans when you're done? Or is
Yes.
it fully paid for? Even if it's fully paid for, I ask folks, is it better for you to go back? Like, what are you tangibly learning that is going to help you do the thing versus like theoretical knowledge and all of that? And I think you make a good note about like folks who are teaching. And it's not to like shade anyone, but even when I was in my master's degree program, there was a big difference. So my master's is in counseling. There's a big
Yeah.
difference in talking to someone who has a private practice, who is counseling individuals every single day and is talking about the application of a theory and then also telling you this is when you have to be human. Like, because there's a big difference from reading what this theory is versus counseling someone in crisis. I remember I only had a handful of professors who actually had a private practice, who didn't just like go through school, get a PhD, and continue to teach at the university setting. There are only a few who actually had a counseling practice, and learning from them was so much different, was so
Yeah.
much different and so much more helpful. Because as you're an early practitioner, you're doing your internships, you're counseling individuals, it was like, oh my gosh, like I can't just like build rapport and regurgitate this back to them when someone's sobbing in front of me.
This is true. This is true.
That doesn't work. And I think I use that method, I use that example to kind of explain what happens in school. Sometimes you can get the best theory, but remember, a lot of times theories are based on the best case scenario. If all of the exact factors come together, then you can apply this theory and it works. But in real life, like no school prepared folks, no MBA prepared folks for what to do during COVID. Like maybe a little bit, but the actual practical
Yeah.
application of what we had to do during COVID, like I worked in HR during that time, that was all humans coming together and deciding what was best for the organization and how not to scare people, but also keep everyone safe.
Yeah. We were all building the plane in the air.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Very much.
I
I feel
don't
like
miss
we
that
barely had
time.
seats. We were in a hunk of metal in the sky, just hoping
Yeah.
that it was going to land during that time.
Exactly. Exactly. Kimberly, there are a number of women that I know are listening to this podcast that are thinking about going back to school. And there's a post I saw on LinkedIn. I'll circulate it. And I don't think this is true for everyone, but I think it's worth mentioning that the other thing to talk about, remember, and you brought it up to me, you're like, I had to check myself to see if I wanted to go back for ego to school. And then there's another piece that I saw on LinkedIn. This is months ago. I can't remember the creator. So if someone's listening and you can, I will tag her. But she talked about going back to school as a trauma response.
Mm.
And I thought that that was really poignant. And I can only speak to that from my coaching, that I don't know that there could be something like I have to be better, that this is the manifestation of when my parents tell me I have to work 2 times harder. I need to make sure it looks like it. But then the other thing is that you are never going to be able to out educate yourself outside of ignorance, right? You will never be able to out educate ignorant thinking, especially if we work in spaces where people feel like they have a natural birthright superiority, right? So that you're never going to be able to do that. So the best way for you to do that is to get your internal MBA, and that means mastering the mechanics of working with people, different people, people you don't like, people you do like, getting the work done. And if you want to go back to school, that's fine. But it's just understand that you can't go out trying to impress the village when the village, most of the village you're working with can't think their way out of a wet paper bag.
And it's all education is not created equal.
Nope.
And I think like I've worked at Ivy League schools and I've worked at other schools. Like I do think that it would be ignorant of me to not acknowledge that some schools have a massive dedication to ensuring you land employment
I
upon
love that.
graduation.
Yeah.
But that is not every school. Not every school has
No.
that resource. There are schools that have incredible alumni networks where because you are now affiliated with this institution, you have a connection to people literally all around the world. Oh, that's amazing. Totally get it. But most schools don't.
They
Most
don't.
schools don't. And it is better to practice your messaging in real time and learn those skills. You'll get further ahead by having tangible work experiences and practicing in real time than kind of taking that break and going back to school or stressing yourself. Because I worked full time and did my master's, and I was miserable. I was absolutely positively
Mhm.
miserable the entire time. I had no life. I cried and cried and cried until I was done. By the time I was done, I was just like, you know what? C's and D's get degrees. So
Okay.
I was so tired, so tired. I was like, I thought about it. I was like, you know what? What happens to the doctor who got a C and a D? They're still a doctor. And I don't ask my doctor, what did you get in this class? I go to my doctor and I have no idea. I'm like, I will be okay because I'm not doing something as important as a doctor. So I will survive.
Yeah.
So I'd love to kind of go back to, and I love that we kind of talked about education and we had this candid conversation because I think that
Yeah.
those are some of the candid conversations that only happen behind closed doors or when you have a coach who's like, girl, get your life together. Like, you don't need to go back to school because everybody's telling you to go back to school. Like, that's not the answer. I wanted to get back to like the practical application. So you say working on your messaging, you said you're helping folks develop frameworks. What would you say
Mhm.
is the time frame for someone to learn these skills, implement them, and essentially change their personal brand to align with that executive image, that perception that's needed so that they can make this move?
Okay, so that might be a three-part answer. So the first is that when we think about like basic messaging communication structures, that could be in as little as 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
As
That's
little
good.
as 2 weeks. However, when we think about just giving you what I call all the skills to become VP ready, which is my program promise,
Mhm.
that's about 90 days.
VP
That's
ready in 90
that's
days.
VP ready in 90 days. So that's putting together what I call your executive iOS system. So
Mhm.
that's anytime you need to strategize. I think that Kimberly, you and I, we've been taught tons of frameworks to be strategic. Part of what I see when people come to me and they're like, I know what that means, but I don't know what it means. There's just too many frameworks. Can we double down on two? Can we make you a SWOT analysis girl? Right? Can we make you a racy chart girl? Like, what can we double down on? So when someone comes to you and you need to synthesize a bunch of information from a bigger strategy or put together the strategy and then put together the tactics, because as women, we are sort of programmed to look at the let's just do, 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 do. And men don't want to do that. So that's what immediately makes them more strategic. And so it's starting to put together sort of a system of what are going to be my go-tos, what's going to be my mental models. Am I going to use the revenue, reputation, risks? Are these the things I think about when I make decisions? So typically that's what I think about tactically. So that's 90 days. Now,
Okay.
perception, perception. If you're going to a new job, sure, you start off the right way in your 30, 60, 90 days doing those things. If you're currently at your job, it is a good idea for you to get your own 360 to understand what do people think about me, because changing a reputation can take the same amount of time it took to build it or longer. In fact, reputation management is the hardest thing to build and the fastest thing to burn down.
Mm.
And so it is very important for you to understand what's my current perception standing, right? Because it's one thing for you to do all those things, but if someone associates you with a moment of having low gravitas, like you not having the right words for something or the right approach for something in their mind, it doesn't matter that you're coming in super polished. That's why that part is really important. Harder to measure. I think it requires some discernment. I do think that discernment is just as much framework as it is spiritual. But I do believe that when we think about applying those things, and that's another thing we look at is okay, if you're looking to use these skills at work, it could take you 2 years to change perceptions. Do you want to do that? That's what I find is that it could take 1 to 2 years to change perception. Some of that is management exiting, moving around, starting to get new sponsors. There's a lot of things. So it's all about what you're looking to do and where your current standing is. And that's why it's important to find people you trust and respect to give you the feedback.
I love that. And you tapped briefly on getting your own 360. So is that something that you do for your clients?
I do. So I do
Okay.
360s for my longer term clients,
Mhm.
and I promise anonymity because I want to get them real feedback. When I can, I try to do that before our container starts. So then for custom coaching, we're using that sort of as a North Star. but for the most part, you can't. So, because people just don't respond, but I do 360 so I can kind of understand how are other people experiencing you.
I love that. And I started doing that with my clients as well. We call it a career audit.
I
And
love
I
that.
tell folks that this is really an opportunity to get the real, understand who you are, how people see you, how people would like to see you, understand specific scenarios. Because when it comes to changing your perception, the way I talk about it, because we say the same thing, but just using different terminology, I'm like, in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
changing your personal brand. I joke and I tell folks all the time, like, I'm going to give you the Kimberly Brown experience no matter where I go. It does not matter if I'm tired, if it's early, if it's late. I remember when I had a global HR job, I'd be on calls at 7 a.m. I'd be talking to teams at 5 a.m. sometimes, and I'd be talking to teams at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. They need to get the same Kimberly, even if
yeah,
it's not my traditional East Coast hours, because that's what's important to them. When you work with people in different markets, it doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter if your kids were screaming this morning or you have a slight
yeah,
cold. It's about the experience. It's about showing that gravitas, that executive presence, and them seeing the best you. And I think that this can easily switch into a conversation. People talk about code switching or like being too high achieving, but I think it's the reality of when you are looking to be an executive leader, you have to be able to withstand pressure. Pressure,
absolutely.
yeah, pressure of your personal life, pressure of things that are happening professionally. So it's not about code switching and not being authentic. Because I'm the first person to say, and I'll tell my team, like, hey, today's the hard day. I'm not exactly feeling like myself, or this is happening, but just know this is what we're going to do. I may need a little
Yeah,
extra time. I may need to leave a little bit early. I may stay a little bit later. I'm perfectly fine being authentic and telling folks to lay the land,
yeah,
but it's going to be with gravitas and not that nervous, anxious, like tension filled energy. And I do think that the audit, the 360, so a 360, for anyone who's not familiar, I probably should have defined this a little earlier.
oh yeah,
It's essentially when you are getting feedback up, down, and across the organization. A lot of times you only get feedback down in organization. So your manager is giving you feedback on who you are. A 360 is all the way around. So it could be a team that you are managing, your managers who are you reporting to them and people all the way across so you can totally understand how you are perceived, how you interact around an organization. Because a lot of times, I'm not sure if you
yeah,
see this, April, but you can find that how your manager perceives you can be wildly different than how your team perceives you, than how like a cross-functional area. And all
yeah,
of that matters when you're trying to move up.
absolutely. And I think that people underestimate the power of someone who does not have a title when they're thinking about influence, building their influence. I find that people overlook coordinators, executive assistants, and those are the people who are often at ground zero, and they do influence process. So it is important for you to get feedback from every individual so you understand how am I coming off on all sides.
Yes. And like you
Yeah.
said, trying to make sure that it's as anonymous as possible. A lot of
Yeah.
organizations don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Right.
And there's also fear of retaliation if folks really gave the real on you. So it's always great having an external person do it. Where like I know for us, like it's forced, like we see it,
Yeah.
or maybe not. We could even make it so we can't even know who responded. We just know we put it out 8 times and we
Absolutely.
want to get 8 responses. And we put, are you up, down, and across? Like there's so many different ways.
It
There's so many
really
different ways,
is.
yeah, to make it anonymous. But I know within an organization, it can be really hard to get that feedback because there's always a little bit of a fear of, is this really and truly going to be kept anonymous? But it can really be pivotal in getting that understanding of who you are.
So you're bringing up something that I had a client in the UK, and I've had many, so I'm comfortable saying where, but they're culturally, how they do things are a little bit different, their ways of working. And it was actually because of that experience, I immediately made a decision to institute the anonymity. But also, I love how you mentioned that you don't even get the names because I began creating a survey. I created a survey monkey where I didn't take their names. I knew it was, but I didn't take
Yeah.
their names down.
Yeah.
And it was because I did uncover, and that's what made me move more so into some of my coaching is so heavily focused on power dynamics because this person that she selected, she thought was a sponsor, and the person had what I call some fundamentally critical feedback that let me know that maybe this person might not be championing them in the rooms that they were in. And so I had to walk a very delicate balance with that person to say that I think she needed a new cabinet from the feedback, right? So it was one thing of the feedback, some of it was really good, but some of it would have been much harder to change in terms of all the feedback that she gave. So it was imbalanced in terms of everything she needed to work on versus what she was good at.
Oh, I love that. When you
Yeah.
have a situation like that, do you recommend to your clients that it may be time for you to change companies? Like it is easier to change companies to change your perception versus try and work at this uphill battle? Or do you try to advise people to kind of stick it out a little bit?
So in this particular scenario, she was contract filling in for a mat leave because mat leave over there is a year.
Okay.
And so she did need to move on. She was focused at that point of trying to create a role for herself there. At that point, we made a decision about, hey, I looked at the data, I was like, this is going to be quite a while because your first 90 days, you started off a certain way. You only have 12 months, you got 9 months. It just isn't enough time for perception change. So typically when I talk to people and I identify like, and I don't really have a framework as much as it is the coaching aspect to understand like what is your tolerance level,
Yes.
what are you doing, and all those things. Usually we will come to the fork in the road to say, well, what's your time frame? Okay, well, the company said 2 years from now I can do, what's your time frame? Right?
Yep.
You're a business too. You're an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. That's all, that's the only difference. So how do you want to continue outsourcing your skills to this company right now? So typically we come to a head where we think about all the relationships. And if I find that a lot of the relationships on our power map is a three, that is an opportunity. That's a time for us to think about it, but also to look at what role did you play? Because you still are a common denominator, right? What role did you play and how do we do this differently? And I do make recommendations from there.
I have a chapter in my book called How to Know When It's Time to Go.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite chapters because I think that there is some merit in sticking it out and sitting in the mud, figuring it out. But you are absolutely correct. And sometimes it is an uphill battle. And sometimes it is better to cut your losses and go externally and start brand new, where no one
I agree.
knows you, especially when you have a great coach who's able to coach you on that first 90-day experience that you're giving folks, because you really can't change that first 90 days. If you kind of start the first 90 days wrong, it sets you off
It
for
does. It does.
for a bad tenure at the company. I feel like it's 10 times longer to change your perception if you've messed up in the first 90 days versus if you mess up like later on in that year or the 2 year mark, you have something that happens. I feel like if you put in that good time and built your EP, built your presence,
Yep.
all of that, you can make up for it versus if you didn't and you kind of ruined it in the beginning, the how to get to know you stage, it's really hard.
It is really hard,
Yeah.
especially if there are some perceptions at certain levels of the organization with certain levels of influence. I think it's one thing if you've ticked off someone adjacent space, it's
Mhm.
another if they're directly in your function.
Yes.
So yeah, but I do like how you said it is worth sticking in the mud because I have found that a lot of people, their response to dealing with situations that are difficult is to always find a new job. And the answer is not a new job because Bill and Sally and all of them, they're going to be waiting for you. And you're going to fail that test every time someone gets smart with you. You're going to fail that test every time something happens and someone steals your work. And that's actually brings me to another thing. The number one reason why people want to leave, one of the things is like, I'm not being credited for my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then my rebuttal is, are you handing it over to them? Because you don't know how to tailor your messaging.
Ooh, how does someone hand their work over to someone else?
Over speaking, oversharing, sharing too many details,
Mm.
giving someone an immersive experience and they weren't there. You're transferring or transfixing an experience to someone when you overshare. And so when they have to go in spaces that you're not going to be in to share the work, they got all the color from you. You gave
Mm.
it, most times you've given it to them.
That's so interesting. I feel like I learned that technique when I was interviewing for senior level roles. I had a very senior level mentor who I got introduced to. He was an older white man too. So I was a little nervous. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to go. But when I tell you this man gathered me for all of my interviews, it was incredible. It was it was like an MBA experience and just interviewing alone. Like,
Yeah.
this is how you interview for senior level roles. And one of the first things he told me when he looked at my slides, because when you interview, especially in higher education for senior level roles, there's always a presentation. There's always a
Mm,
presentation of strategy every single time. I think to anyone who's listening who's in higher ed, you're probably laughing because you already know those interviews, it's an endurance test. My longest interview ever in higher education, it started, I had to be on campus at like 9 a.m. I did not leave until 7.
yeah.
It was an entire day. And that was not the only time I was on that campus. I was on campus like 3 or 4 times to get that job. But in one of those presentations, I
Hmm.
remember my mentor at the time, he's like, nope, take that out. Nope, take that out. You can't give them the whole thing. We need
Nope.
to give the illusion of the whole thing. He's like, I want you to build this slide, but blur it out. Just give the top topic and touch on it, but don't give the slides. Make sure that you do it on your computer. If you do it on their computer, delete your deck. Like, and make sure,
That's a good
yeah.
tip.
Oh yeah. He's
Yeah.
like, make sure that your deck, they
Yeah.
may just move it to the trash. Make sure you move it into the trash and then you empty the trash. He's like, because what they're not going to do is take all your IP and then not hire you. And then you see it on their website or with the new director who they did not, and they didn't hire you. But he really taught me a lot about how you can showcase that you know your stuff but don't give it all away. And I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before because when you're in there, I remember one of the pieces of feedback that I got when I worked in corporate was that I needed to socialize my ideas more. I needed to bring people along the journey. So how would you bring someone along the journey but
Hmm.
not transfer your IP?
So I've also teach my clients the same thing, and I'm sure you do too. I do think it's important to pre-socialize ideas because when you're going into something as important as a meeting,
Mhm.
if a decision point needs to come from that decision happens before the meeting.
Yes.
Right. And so with that, that means that you're finding trusted people to pre-socialize that with. They should come from your executive board of directors, right? I don't think that you should be socializing everything. And I do think that there is a way to give people a lot while giving them very little. And that's sharing the overview, your thoughts about things, but you don't have to give them more that those tactical steps. Another thing is if you are in an organization where you sort of have to do that, and I have people that do that, it's orating the tactical parts and the nuanced
Mm.
parts, right? They're not going to remember all of it. And so it is important to socialize your ideas, but it's also important to make sure that you play a lot of the details around it very close to the vest.
Oh, I love
And
that.
if you do need to cascade more of that out, you should consider expanding your board of directors to make sure that you have a trusted, vested relationship with them. But in terms of like sharing things with your manager, especially if your manager is somebody who steals from you, it will be important. So I will give you something. This is something that I don't recommend everyone do unless you feel like you have a good handle on it. But I'm dealing with a client, this is maybe 2, 3 months ago, where when she would share an idea with her manager and she wasn't a part of the cadence that her manager would be presenting, it would be presented as though it was her manager. So what we began doing was pre-socializing the overarching idea with her skip level.
Yes.
So when it began to come up. And so it's very important that you understand sort of the dynamics around how to make sure things are pre-socialized, but do it in a way to say, I'm sharing this with you. Of course, I'll share it with Beverly. You're not going to share everything with Beverly. No, right? Of course, I'll share it, but it'll be very important for them to know that the origin of the idea wasn't from this person who hasn't been to any professional development. That's the other thing. I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent.
No,
The
no.
people that are most dangerous to work for are people who don't develop themselves. They tend to
Mhm.
steal more.
Yes.
100%. A complacent manager is not going to want you to rise above their station. You want a hungry manager. I don't want to always be a VP. I want to be a C-suite. So you want this VP role? You don't want somebody who
Yes.
always wants to be in that role because they're never going to develop you to be in that role. And so I'm just saying that how someone I always my belief is that how you do one thing is how you do a lot of things. So if you find someone stealing, they're probably also insecure. They probably are working their way into planned obsolescence by not sharing their role, by not doing knowledge transfers, by not doing those things. And it's very important that you archetype them and learn how to deal with them accordingly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I so many gems there, so many
Yeah.
gems.
Yeah.
And I always tell all of my clients, like one manager does not stop a show. Like
Absolutely not.
it does not. Like one manager does not. And the reality is most people were not taught how to manage properly. So therefore they are bad managers. Most people I believe have bad managers. So I love that you talked about, okay, well, of course I talked to Beverly. Of course I shared with the team. Like this
Yeah.
impacts the executive team and all the cross functions. So I definitely took it upon myself so that when your manager's in that meeting, I always say that your manager is forced to act better when everyone around is in support of you.
That
And they're
is
like, oh yeah,
so,
like April and I met last week and we talked about how this kid da 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 da. Your manager then has to backtrack. Or for a lot of organizations that do the performance evaluation process, and it's almost like group think. Everyone, I remember a lot of organizations I was at, we'd all the leaders would be at a table. We each have a few minutes to bring our person to the table. We had to explain who they are,
mhm.
what money we thought they needed, why, da 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 da. And then everybody had to essentially talk or weigh in on that individual. So it was a lot. But if your manager did not advocate for you, or and everyone at that table was like, oh my God, I met April and she did this. And oh, when I talked to April, they did this. You almost wanted to run out of time. That's how you knew someone was going to get the money because
Oh yeah.
people, they just couldn't stop talking. Like it's so important that everyone else at the table, because even if your manager does a poor job in presenting you, if you have relationships all around your manager with their leaders and their people who are on the same level, then they can't sit there and badmouth you or not support you because they'll be like, oh my God, no, 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 no. So I know you didn't mention this, but when I worked with her, this is what happened. So then your manager can't be like, well, I don't think she's not ready. Because then someone else will be like, oh, no, 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 no. Because when we did this, she did this for my team. And I love this. And it really creates that advocacy and changes the
Yeah.
perception of the room. Your manager is almost forced to just shut up and not say anything. Or they have to support you too, because they look crazy then if everyone
They
else is
do.
supportive of who you are. And they're the ones sitting there trying to like keep you down and not promote you, not advocate for you in whatever way.
I agree. You want to make people look genuinely crazy when they have to, when they say something left about you. Everybody's like, that's not my experience.
Yes.
That's reputation management.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So I want to switch gears
Yeah.
just a little bit as we get close to coming to a close. We've
Sure.
talked a lot about the internal, like what is happening at their company, their perception, their messaging, their communication. We talked about relationship building, everything that's happening inside of the four walls in their company, either virtual, hybrid, or in person. But what about what's happening outside? How important do you believe external visibility is? Things like speaking, thought leadership, showing up publicly, larger town halls, industry events. How do you feel like that helps or doesn't help executives as they're trying to get to that next level?
So I think it serves two purposes. If you work, especially in a large organization, like I worked at L3 Harris and I wasn't encouraged to have a personal brand, but I started it at least just with sharing internal stuff on LinkedIn. It gave me exposure to people in other segments of the business that were in other states or satellite locations. And so then you're no longer your function's best kept secret. So that's one. But two, it's career insurance.
Mhm. Yeah.
So so I think that it is imperative to be a talking head of your experience in 2026. It's not cute. It's not a nice to have. You need to have a brand. I think as we think about how to do that brand internally, because, and Kimberly, you and I talked about this, there are some organizations that want to be acutely aware of what your pillars are and what you're going to be talking about. So it's important that you follow that protocol. But in general, I have found that as long as you make your current company one of those pillars to keep them off your back, you typically don't run into any issues when you're speaking and when you're posting content and when you're a part of organization. So I absolutely think that it's necessary in this climate to have a personal brand.
Oh yeah. I 100% agree. And I think even saying the word personal brand, I think to some professionals can even feel intimidating because saying, "Oh, I'm having a personal brand," it sounds almost like I'm an influencer, right? Because you shared a
Yeah.
recipe yesterday online or you shared like your favorite coffee shop in the
Mhm.
area. It's like, "Oh my God, am I an influencer now? Do I have a personal brand now?" No. And I think that we're just putting names to a thing. Having a personal brand doesn't mean, at least I tell my clients, you don't need to go build a website. Okay. I don't need you to build a website. I don't need you to have a logo. I don't need you to do all of those things, but I need you to have a thought, a point of view that you can consistently iterate. If you want to do it on social media, great. If you want to do it at professional associations, great. If you want to do it in smaller group settings, great. But whatever it is that you are kind of attached to this idea, this methodology, while being
Yeah.
in compliance with your company, because we don't need you to get fired, right? We don't need you to get
I need
fired.
you to get fired.
So
No.
whether you're able to include them, like you said, in one of the pillars, or I've been in experiences where I couldn't include them at all. And that's what they wanted to see, that they wanted to
Yeah.
see that it was nothing, that you did not know where I worked, or I needed to have all opinions on my own. So whether you get to include them
Yeah.
or whether you don't, you know what the rules are and you just play by that.
Absolutely. I think I love that. And when I said including them in the pillars, I'm finding specifically with the LinkedIn personal brand,
Yes.
it is important that you think about sharing like the company updates and if you're volunteering with the company and all those things. And so it does a couple things. It shows that you're happy at work, keeps them off your heels and you not being pulled in HR. When I first started doing personal branding coaching, I don't do it anymore because I think that it's a niche in itself, like what you're doing. I was running into people being pulled into HR a little bit to say, are you happy here? And that's when we decided, if for LinkedIn specifically, let's make this a part of your pillars. So they're like, they know you're all in at work.
Yes. Yes, that's important. I think there's
Yeah.
so much about perception. One of the stories I always tell my clients is that early on in my career, I used to work in banking. But like many folks, I lived in New York, did not have enough money to live, basically. So I got a job working at a local Victoria's Secret Pink. So I'd go from my banking job during the day with high net worth clients to at night, I'd be folding panties at Victoria's Secret Pink. And I tell people that that interview was one of the hardest interviews I've ever had in my entire life. They wanted me to know
Wow.
every single cut of panty, every bra, every new line. And I tell folks that really taught me the importance of it doesn't matter whether you are working in retail or whether you are in a Fortune 100 company on the executive team. Everyone wants to feel like this is where you want to be. They did not care what I did full time. They did not care at all. They wanted to make sure that if a client came in and said they want tonga versus bikini versus high rise versus thong versus whatever, I knew where it was in the store. I knew what sizes it came in. I knew what
Yeah.
bra would work for them. And that's what they wanted me to have an in-depth knowledge, appreciation, and excitement about the brand, not just making an hourly paycheck and going home. And I tell folks,
Yes.
no matter where you are, they want to feel like you are vested. So I think that's a really good tip that
Yeah.
you shared about how can you also bring the company along with you. And I love being here, even if you don't.
Even if you
Even if you
don't.
don't, we need to let them feel,
Oh.
let them feel like you are excited to be a part of the community. Because no matter what your plans are, it's important that, especially when you're looking to be an executive, I
Mhm.
think that executive, how you're showcasing your current company, other companies are also watching and will be excited for you to be a part of their network based upon what they see you currently doing too.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
subtle advertising. Look, you're not even talking about the new place. They're like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, like we want that. We
we
want,
do.
and that is just you're essentially like it's a megaphone for what an amazing employee you are.
Absolutely. And how you can elevate the brand of the company you work with. No, that was such a great point, Kimberly. Um, I have definitely seen that too, especially in sourcing.
Yes.
Especially, a lot of people, there's this argument, green banner, no green banner. All I can tell you is that they're sending their recruiters out to look for people who are currently happy and working at the company. And that answers your question
Yes.
about how vocal am I about being unhappy here or whatever the case is, right? And so it excludes you because you have two opposite ends of the spectrum. They're going directly for current
Yeah.
happy employees.
Right. People like to steal. When I worked in talent
Yeah.
acquisition, folks love to steal.
Oh,
They
they love
love
it.
stealing the person who looks like they're the happiest at the other company. They love
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oh,
They
yeah, they
love that.
do.
And even better, I think your current company will love to steal you back
They do.
years
They
later.
do.
They love a boomerang, so it could only help you. So you've
Yeah.
shared so much. So if we could distill all of your advice down into like the one thing. So if there's someone listening right
Mm.
now who's like, oh my gosh, I know that I could be chief so and so in the next like 1 to 3 years if I were able to like implement some of the things that we talked about today. What would you say to that individual who knows that like, I'm ready for my next executive role?
I would tell them not to sit on it because
Oh,
then you'll find yourself, I want to be an executive 2024. I want to be an executive in 2025. Oh, wow. Gee, year of our Lord 2026. I still want to be an executive. Do you see how
yeah.
you're still waking up with a dream?
Yeah.
My belief and my goal, and Kimberly, that's why I love the work that you do, is to demystify how difficult it is, because I often find that people don't realize that you're just working differently with a different set of skills, and you're overseeing a lot of the things that you once used to do, but it's not inherently more difficult than what you're already doing now. In fact, I have said this before, if you are listening, then most people who are thinking about being an executive are already at what I call the hardest job in corporate America, director.
Yes.
Hardest job in corporate America,
Yes.
most dumped on, slapped on. You're already at what I call at the peak of execution difficulty. So
Mhm.
if there was something for me to think about for you to begin doing is the shift, or what I call crossing the chasm. Crossing the chasm, the most challenging part is that I work tactically all the time. I talk about it tactically. Can I begin shifting and looking at everything I do and tying it up to the overall 1, 2, 3 year vision of the organization? And can I start speaking that way? Can I start speaking and seeing what I do in outcomes? Can I start seeing that my desk is not bigger than the program? Those are the
Mhm.
things that I want you to start thinking about right now. And I think that, there's this belief that right now I'm going to reframe climbing down the ladder. There's a lot of people on TikTok, Instagram, they're all making videos in their car. We all seen it's like the same sticker. Anybody else want to climb down the ladder? Anybody else just want to go home? While they climb down the ladder,
Yes.
okay, I want you to grease up that rung for yourself so you can keep climbing up there so you don't get any calluses on your hands.
Yes.
Okay. Grease it up, because middle management is shrinking. And I'm not saying that to scare anyone. I just think that we're at a unique place in time where I don't think that we are free to have the option to say, I don't want to go any further.
Mm. Yeah.
So do you want to be the architect, or do you want to be told what to do?
Choose your heart.
Nothing wrong with either. I'm just saying I'm talking directly to our demographic right now.
Yeah.
Nothing
Choose
wrong
your
with
heart.
either, but it's like, what do you want to do? So
Oh, I
yeah,
love
that's
that.
what I would say.
Oh my gosh, I have nothing
Okay.
to say on that. So I need you to tell the people. This conversation obviously has been amazing. I could talk to you for like another hour.
I think we've talked for like 3 hours total when I couldn't do it on Friday.
Yes.
So
So
yeah,
those of you who don't know, this is our second time recording. The
yeah.
first one we had some technical difficulties, but April had to come back, so we made it
We came
happen.
back.
And
Thank
I
you for
like this
having me too.
conversation better. I like it better.
I like it too,
Perfect. So
because there's
let the
no tech
people.
difficulties either. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, let the people know where can they find you if they want to learn more about your work, learn more about you, follow along.
So I am in this season starting to move over to IG. So you can follow me on IG at I am April Little. I'm on LinkedIn at April Little, and taking a break this month, if at the time of recording, from coaching. But if you are interested in articulating your value and positioning yourself around likability and all that, that's what I do specifically towards interviewing. But if you're looking to get promoted, I have my executive material iOS, and that's where you can find me starting in May.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. As always, thank you so much, April. We appreciate you. And
Thank
I feel like you're
you.
going to be back again because I can think
We
about
will be
things.
back.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone who's listening, until next time, may your next move be your very best move. See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Your Next Move podcast. If this episode has helped you get clearer on how to get seen as a leader, speak with influence, and step into rooms where you belong, please share it with a colleague or friend who needs to hear it too. And if you're ready to develop a speaker brand that opens doors and attracts the right opportunities, head to kimberlybonline.com/TVS-waitlist to explore how we can work together. Until next time.